Welcome to the High Level Podcast, guys. Thank you again for joining us this week. I'm joined as always by my masters in mechanical engineering, Mr. Damon Hutzelaar. How are you today, kind sir?
I'm here and I'm ready.
You're here and you're ready.
I'm ready as always.
As always. Guys, if you are joining us for the first time, we discuss engineering and science, and we try to keep you up to date. And, you know, we're just two white guys with a podcast, but we're doing our best. I don't know about you, Mr. Hutzelaar. I'm doing my best. Are you doing your best?
I believe I am.
You believe you are? Okay, lekker, man. This week is my week's episode, right? And you have come into this with a fresh mind. You're ready to be enriched. Is that correct?
I see what you did there.
Yeah, you see what I did there. I'm planting the seeds. I'm planting the seeds for everyone. But anyway, guys, enough with the pleasantries. This week we're going into carbon capture. Carbon capture. I don't know if it's a bad guy. It's sort of a neutral guy. It's meant as the savior, right? I don't know if you've heard any of this. People going in saying carbon capture, it's the way. Bill Gates has a whole bunch of things going. I don't know what's your like unresearched view on carbon capture, if you had to put a pin in it right now.
I mean, on face value, I think it sounds like a really cool idea. I mean, it's from what I do have a bit of a research, and because I know that carbon capture is basically used if you think about blue hydrogen. So if you produce hydrogen and capture the CO2 and store that, then that hydrogen is labeled as blue hydrogen, which is, from what I know, is like a sort of intermediary step until we get the technology there to produce green hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is the necessary evil.
Yeah, it's meant to like fill the gap.
Evil.
Yeah, the interim type of thing. Yeah. So that's basically your view on it. So it's a good interim step, basically. Is that your final thought on it?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That's a
final thing, but I think
that's a reasonably educated guess, and I think I'm going to ask you the same question at the end of this episode. But it's an interesting tech, and we'll get into it, right? So this first graph is what I want to lead off with. So basically, going to scare you guys into, like, we actually need to take this seriously now. I don't know. Ever since starting this podcast, I get more fearful every week. I don't know about you. It just seems like everything in the world we're just not doing enough. so, I don't know, but anyway, guys, I will throw this graph up.
I think it's There's a song, and I think it's by Until the Ribbon Breaks, and they have a line in the song that says is always falling apart, and that's its primary basic function.
Always its primary basic function. Okay, maybe that's what we're getting at here. So, guys, I'm going to throw this graph up on the screen, and for those of you who are listening, I'm going to do my best to paint a word picture here. But basically what this graph is on the y-axis, it's got billions of tons of CO2 that we emit every year. This is globally. And showing the trajectory of if we want to hit the Paris Agreement. For those of you who can't remember the Paris Agreement, it's basically that a whole bunch of countries have signed an agreement saying we're going to try our best to reach net zero, and this should keep us within global warming temperatures less than 2 degrees Celsius overall averaged. So this is that graph that basically shows us if we don't act now, it's going to be a bit rough. They give a few, like, sort of, I don't know how to explain it, like, during this point in time, this is how much global emissions reduced. And it's quite interesting. Like, during COVID, obviously everything was shut down. We saw a 7% decrease in emissions for that year compared to the previous year, which is wild. And you can see there's that little gray part. I don't know if you can see it there. Basically, if we had to keep reducing 7% per year compounded annually, that would have been cool.
I was going to ask you about, there's a dip there.
That was COVID.
I was going to ask, is that because that's already when people started fixing things, or was there another reason?
What do you mean during COVID there? Well, that was just because the whole world was shut down.
It says COVID 7%.
There we go. Now you got me. Now you got me. Now we got you. Okay, anyway, so the bigger thing I want to point out, you see the brown line. So that brown line basically dips down all the way to 2050. And that brown line assumes that we can reduce carbon emissions by 50% by 2030. And then down, you'll see there it's point number 4 at the bottom of the graph. 45% by 2030. and then all the way to net zero by 2050. That would keep us on the 1.5 degree path. So we would only see temperatures rise by 1.5 degrees. That little blue line there you'll see is the other one within the 2 degree path. And that one, we reduce 25% by 2030 and then net zero by 2070. And we still stay within the 2 degree range. But yeah, it's a scary graph, to be honest. That top one there is the unlimited, unmitigated thing, which I don't know. I feel like that's the path we might follow. I don't want to be like pessimistic, but it doesn't seem like we've been doing a lot. I mean, we've been trying to reduce carbon emissions since like the early 2000s. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on human nature here?
And it actually looks like you know what I think is scary about it is that it's a long-term thing. And I think a lot of people, it's difficult to conceptualize
how hard it's going to be to come back.
To solve it, you know?
Yeah. No, 100% agree. So then the final one there, you'll see that 2.4 degree path. That's basically if countries manage to hit their own targets that they've set. I'm not exactly sure how they work that out, but that would leave us on a 2.4 degree path. So I think people get a bit also like, you don't think like, okay, 2.4 degrees, like it doesn't really mean much. But like most crops and stuff for agriculture, for example, have a very small band of temperatures that they can actually grow in. So you affect the whole value chain. Scary. All right. So this graph,
and also
basically,
that's average temperature as well.
Exactly. Average temperature doesn't give you the high lows, obviously.
Yeah.
Which is also scary. But so this is the thing. So we see this graph, scary. One of the heroes of the day is people say, oh, but we have carbon capture. And this is supposed to be like, okay, we can get to net zero, but we can mechanically pull CO2 out of the atmosphere. Yay, we can actually get to net negative. That would be awesome, right? Sounds like the way to go. But as we will see, it's not that simple. All right, so for those of you who have heard carbon capture, what is it? What's it about? This is the story now. So carbon capture, basically exactly what it says. To remove carbon, either like as a process is happening, like if you see those big smokestacks when you're driving around, like to remove carbon as you're burning a fossil fuel, like let's for example say coal or diesel. So you remove the CO2 directly from that and make the air going out a little bit cleaner, a little bit better for the environment. Then you get the newer technology, which we'll touch on a bit as well, which is direct air capture, which is basically you put a big ass fan somewhere in the middle of nowhere and you suck in air from the atmosphere and then you remove that CO2 in an effort to aid Mother Earth. And that's carbon capture. We're going to go a bit more into it. So you have the full acronym is CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, and then storage. So what do you do with the carbon, the CO2, once you've captured it? And that is carbon capture. And we're going to use, as we discussed, Mr. Unselar, the cement industry as my example to cement this knowledge in your mind. Did you like that one? Hey, that was saucy, right?
I liked it quite a lot.
That was saucy right there, right? Okay, so
that's tomato.
That's exactly that. So let's give you some quick numbers on the concrete industry, because it's actually a very big industry, believe it or not. Building is like a thing. So concrete industry is apparently the third largest CO2 emitter. I don't know. I find it second and third. There's different, depends which survey you look at. Between second and third largest CO2 emitter in the world, right? People building things like that. Cement production figures stand between 3 and 3.6 gigatons of carbon, of CO2 produced per year. That's a lot, considering we only produce about 40 gigatons of CO2 per year. So that's what, 10%, close to? I know I'm not supposed to do maths on the fly, but that's the story. So we got here as well, there's numbers all over the place, but about 3.24 billion tons of CO2 per year to produce 3.6 billion tons of cement, which is a lot of CO2, right? Does that number astound you? Billion. Are you still processing?
No, I'm taking that number in.
It's a big number, right? It's a very big number. So call it between 5 and 10% of global CO2 emissions just from the cement industry. So pretty wild. And I think it's interesting to see what the process is. So I'll walk you guys quickly just at like a very brief overview of where all these CO2 emissions come from in the cement production process. So in the process, right? In the process. So the biggest CO2 emissions come from what is known as the calcification of calcium carbonate, which is limestone. So that basically you get raw limestone at the cement factory at AfriSam or Afrimat or wherever you are. You get limestone, which is calcium carbonate. And then you burn that in a combustion chamber between like 750 and 900 degrees Celsius. And then that calcium carbonate is converted to calcium oxide, which they call quicklime, which is CaO. So I'm going to say some letters now. I don't know if this is the best for a podcast, but calcium carbonate is Ca, calcium, CO3. Then you pull off CO2 basically, and you get quicklime, which is CaO. So the CO2 comes out as a gas, and the CaO comes out as like a powdery type thing. And then that goes through further processing. And this step, just this burning of the calcium carbonate, accounts for 60 to 70% of all the CO2 in the actual raw material process. And then about 65% of the fuel for the whole concrete production process comes from here. So a lot of it's just in the calcium carbonate to calcium, to quicklime, calcium oxide, right? So a lot of it comes from there. And you'll see as we get further into this, this is a lot where they see the benefits of carbon capture because it's all like in one step in the process. Pretty easy to pull the CO2 stream off. Then just a quick one, the lime then goes through a process. It's burned at 1,450 degrees. And then they sinter it a bit. And then you produce what's known as clinker. I've never heard this. The cement process is actually very interesting. You get what's called clinker. And these are little like gray nodules about 25 mils in diameter. And then from there, you can grind it up. It usually goes to a different processing facility. They mix it with some gypsum, and then you get the actual stuff that you go and you buy to build your house with in the big brown bags. And that's how you get cement. But again, a lot of the CO2 emissions come from the beginning of the process when you burn that calcium carbonate. Is this making sense to you, Mr. Insular?
Yeah, I didn't quite know that so much comes from the calcium.
Right? The initial process. Yeah. It's crazy. Okay. It's absolutely crazy.
So you kind of get the double whammy of the combustion, and then you get the chemical reaction.
Exactly, right. So a lot of it.
Now I can now understand why it's the third or second largest CO2 producer. I said we be building them buildings, and then I did this with my guy.
That's very nice. We be building them buildings, and that's essentially it, right? So if we just to round this out, estimates are that around 50% of the CO2 is produced in the calcination. Yes, see these chemical words. The calcination process. 50% of that CO2. Then the other 40% is due to the fueling, what they use to make the kilns burn, things like that. And then 10% from indirect, so transport and, running the facility, things like that. So a lot of it is really due to the chemical process and the burning of the fossil fuels, exactly like you say. And we will circle back on the cement industry as we get to the end of this poddy, just to show you guys how much carbon capture can actually help in a process like this. But now we move on to the actual bones of this podcast. What is carbon capture? How does it exactly work? Now, Mr. Hunselaar, I don't know if you know how carbon capture works. Are you a carbon capture expert? Not even slightly. Oh, not even slightly. You see, I missed that. Not even slightly. All right. Well, I am a 2-hour expert because that's how long it took me to research this podcast. So I'll walk you through it as the expert that I am. So basically, you get the first step in the process is obviously collecting the stream that you want to purify now, which is usually like a flue gas from a kiln, a stack, whatever the story is. You pull that gas off. That's the first step. Makes sense. Then you cool it down to like a reasonable temperature where you can start processing it. Very normal things here. Then it goes through what's known as an adsorber. And this adsorber has a few chemicals in it, some of which are known as amines. And amines are great because they like to bind to CO2. So that's the main benefit of them. So you pump it through basically a bath of, it's a solvent, has amines in it, binds to the CO2. Then this mixture goes out of this absorber now. And then the carbon-free air, you can just send it out into the atmosphere, use it again, whatever your story is. But then you get this mixture of amines and CO2. And then this goes into what's known as a regenerator, a stripper, whatever you want to call it. And basically you use heat to thermally crack the amines away again. So you crack them away, you get a gas stream of CO2. You can take the amines back into the process to do their thing with the other flue gas. And then that CO2 stream, you compress. You usually compress it to the point where it's a liquid, and then you transport it via pipeline to wherever it needs to go. And that's carbon capture, like in a nutshell. Does that make sense to you? Any questions on that?
You're essentially drowning the CO2, it dissolves in the amines, and then you go to a next step in the process where I think they heat it up and then the CO2 gets released. and then they can capture that into a vessel or something, and then that gets compressed and then pumped through a gas line or through a pipe. How do they want to use it? In a nutshell.
In a nutshell, that was a very good summary, Mr. Hunselaar. You are a great student. I appreciate you.
Yeah. What happens when you try to learn things?
Amen to that. So there's a few different points in the process where you can also capture carbon, and I gave a brief summary of these as well. Post-combustion is obviously, like we're talking about now, you have a kiln, you burn coal to warm the kiln up. That flue gas, that would be post-combustion. You're basically taking the exhaust gas and doing your thing with it. Then you get what's known as pre-combustion. So this is still a form of carbon capture. And in pre-combustion, you basically take the fossil fuel that you want to burn and you run it through like a gasifier process. So this to me, I might be wrong. This to me seems like the Sassel process, Fischer-Tropsch process, where you basically take coal and you make it into a synthetic gas so that it basically burns cleaner. Do you agree with me on that? I don't know if I know enough about the Fischer-Tropsch process to say that.
I also don't think I know enough about it.
Don't know enough. Anyway, you take it through a magical process and you make a synthetic gas which theoretically burns a bit cleaner. And I found an example of this. It's in Kemper County, which is somewhere in America. They have one of these plants here, and they basically take coal, they turn it into a synthetic gas fuel, and then they run their boilers off of it. And they call it, called an IGC. This is an integrated gasification combined cycle plant, which is where they do what I said basically. And they say that this carbon capture method, so this is pre-combustion, it uses between 10 and 40% of the energy produced in the power station to do this actual process. So basically at the end of the day, it's going to be more expensive to produce the electricity, but you get the benefit of the CO2 emissions are about 95% less than a conventional coal power station. So I guess it's like a pro and a con. Like, I don't know, if people are willing to pay for less pollution, then why not, right? Make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, sure. Just got hit with those massive tariff increases from Eskom.
Yeah, no. Did you see they've approved another one for next year? Well, I don't know. I think it's in the process. It's a 35%
anyway, I'm just
hike.
saying, like, so, yeah, and this is between 10 and 40%. So, I mean, that could easily just justify. So, like, would people even be willing to pay that?
I think it's
a whole question on its own.
No, 100%. I think the health benefits you'll get from the community surrounding it would be great, though. I mean, 95% less emissions. I don't know. I mean, that's for the people around the power station to decide, I think. But yeah, so this would be the pre-combustion carbon capture. Turn it into a synthetic gas and then burn that. It obviously uses energy to do that. Then I found another one. Interesting. It's called oxy-fuel combustion, where basically you take the fossil fuel and you burn it in oxygen-rich air instead of just normal air. And apparently this produces mainly a stream of CO2 and water vapor, which basically makes the CO2 easier to get at. I don't know. They call it a form of carbon capture. Maybe it is. And maybe it just makes the CO2 easier to get at, I think, is basically the main point of that. But that's carbon capture in a nutshell, guys.
All right, so Mr. Delport, you've a lack of explanation on what carbon capture is and the different ways we do it and why we do it. But it's called carbon capture utilisation. So that I think, where do we use CO2? I mean, what's the point of us capturing it and then using it?
Exactly.
I mean, I understand storing it,
but why not use it?
Do we use it?
That's fair enough. And this is where we get into the conspiracy part of the podcast, right? Are you ready for this? You ready for this?
Ask copy.
Fair enough. All right. So the way we utilize, the idea around it is, okay, so CO2 is a useful molecule. How can we use it again? And you'll see there a nice graph, which I will throw up magically on the screen now because this is television and we make it entertaining. The way we use CO2, there we go, of editing. The way we use this captured CO2 is actually to produce more fossil fuels. Believe it or not. Do you believe that?
It just seems a bit counterintuitive, really.
Right? All right, guys. Yeah.
But isn't the whole point of carbon capture when it comes to using fossil fuel, can use the fossil fuels without the consequences?
You see that you would think so, right? But the oil industry, and it's very weird because you'll see later on most of the actual CCUS facilities are owned and operated by the fossil fuel companies themselves. And these guys only do it if there's something in it for them. And basically what's in it for them is they get better yields from their oil fields, which we'll go into a bit. But you'll see this nice little graph here. That big blue part, basically 2/3 of the pie chart, is CO2 that's used for enhanced oil recovery, which we'll get into a bit. We can go through a few of the other ones here. What else is interesting to you here? Beverage carbonation. I don't exactly know. Like, is a CO2 molecule a CO2 molecule? If you put it
actually, I feel, why wouldn't it be?
I don't know. It just seems like I'm taking.
You can buy the CO.
Yeah.
Blue gas and drinking it now.
Exactly. Like you can't. Surely you can't, it's not food grade, man.
I wasn't ready for that one.
No, you weren't. Okay, so anyway, CO2 obviously used in beverage carbonation a lot. We've got in the food industry just in general, whatever that's for. There's some precipitated calcium carbonate, whatever that's for. Basically, there's a lot of uses for CO2, but its main use is in enhanced oil recovery.
Should be more, and I'm sure it's part of that other category. Is like, when people have their weddings and then they put the dry ice there on the floor and then they atmosphere. I feel like that should have its own slice.
I feel like
but maybe it just goes into other.
That is the full other slice. I think that is clearly a massive market. Oh goodness, sorry, there's a window popping. No, fair enough. But okay, so let's get into enhanced oil recovery. Are you familiar with enhanced oil recovery other than what I've told you today?
Yeah, I didn't even know you could enhance oil recovery to begin with. But...
Can you believe it, right? All right, guys. So basically, what enhanced oil recovery is it gives the oil companies basically more access to their oil reserves underground. So just for perspective, just so guys understand this, in the US, there's been a total estimated of about 600 billion barrels of oil in the US that's available for taking out of the ground. But they estimate that they can only pull out 200 billion barrels because the other 400 billion, we don't have technology to actually get the oil out. So it's still there. We can probably get it at some point, but with what we have now, we can't get at it. And this is where enhanced oil recovery comes in. So the CO2 that they capture from other parts of their process and tell the public they're doing this so that they can be more green, that CO2 is actually very useful when you're trying to recover more oil. So an oversimplified version of this is you drill a well, you suck out the oil that you can. Once you can't do it with what you have anymore, you pump, first they pump in water, but then you can pump in CO2. So you pump CO2 underground. CO2 is nice because when it binds with oil, it decreases the viscosity of the oil, making it easier to suck out of the ground. First point, right? The second point is CO2 sort of seeps through the rocks and basically provides like a positive pressure to sort of push the oil up and out. And then you get, guess what? More fossil fuels that you can burn and pull carbon dioxide off of, or whatever you want to do, right? It's a win-win.
And yeah, CO2, which extracts your fossil fuels, which you can burn, and then get CO2 to get more fossil fuel.
It's all making sense.
No problems.
It's all making sense, right? So so that's enhanced oil recovery, and this is sort of why the big oil companies are incentivized. There's even a small incentive that the US government gives companies that run CCUS plants, which seems a bit wild to me, but I'm sure they're capitalizing on that. So that's enhanced oil recovery. Good, bad, I don't know. The fossil fuel companies are using it. I think they're just using it to sort of greenwash their operations, but in the end, they get to pull out more fossil fuels than they ever would have without it. So, thoughts, Mr. Hutzelaar? Is there a CCUS mafia? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm just going to hit the controversial button here.
Oh no!
And it really seems to me, with carbon capture, it's really how do I say this? Like I said, I feel like the way it's is that you can use fossil fuels without the consequences of the CO2. And that's kind of how they're framing it. And like, okay, cool, because of this technology, it's greener. But from what you're explaining is that like It's really just an ulterior motive, like they really want to get the fossil fuels more efficiently and cheaper.
It's suspicious, right? It's very suspicious. But yeah, it is what it is. They use it. Flippin', I don't have an opinion on it at this point. We can maybe do a poll at the end of this. Okay, then we get to the last letter in the acronym, CCUS. So storage, right? If we're not going to use the CO2 to pump down to get more oil out, the CO2 must be stored somewhere. And a lot of this is stored in, you guessed it, underground oil fields, underground salt caverns, underground mines, whatever the story is, wherever they feel like they can make like an airtight sort of pocket. So yeah, there's not much to say about this. Once you pull the CO2 off, you got to do something with it. If you're not going to use it, you must store it somewhere. So a lot of it is transported. So you transport it via pipeline, and then you pump it underground. Makes a lot of sense. The real like concern obviously is now we put a whole bunch of CO2 in the ground. What happens if it leaks out? And most studies say it's very unlikely that it will leak out. The bigger concern actually is like what happens if it leaks into like people's groundwater and starts to cause like severe like health hazards to people. And I don't know, I read a few studies and it's sort of like unclear. Most of them are like probably won't happen. If it does, they can control it. And that's storage. I think it's more a public perception thing than like a technology thing. Like you find natural CO2 deposits all over under the Earth's crust. So it's not like we're doing something that the Earth doesn't do itself. It's just like if something bad happens, what do we do? And I don't think anyone really has an answer to that. Unless you do. Do you have an answer to that, Mr. Insular?
I've been trying to do a bit of Googling here.
Yeah.
Well, to see if I can find like from the carbon they're capturing and using to recover the oil, how does the carbon emissions produced by using the oil that they've now been able to get more efficiently? I think that would be a very interesting metric to find. I've yet that metric.
Okay. Well, let us know when you find one.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe it will be like a little add-on in our next episode.
It could be a little admin thing.
Honorable mention, you know.
An honorable mention. With that being said, I think let's take a quick admin break. Mr. Hunselaar, would you like to give a shout out to one of our listeners who specifically asked for a shout out?
I said I would like to give a shout out to our colleague and friend Louis Gomez.
Gomez. I think he's gonna love that, man. I'm going to send him literally just this snippet of it. Okay, for anyone who doesn't know, it's actually Gomes. He gets very upset when we call him Gomez because that's Spanish and he's Portuguesa. He's a Portuguesa. I don't know if I used the right accent there. That felt racist. Was it a little
But
bit
he's
racist?
good peoples.
He's good peoples. He's good peoples. All right, guys. Then just to give you guys a little bit of feedback. So we did a LinkedIn poll on nuclear because we wanted to see what's the kind of public perception of our LinkedIn audience. We got a few votes. The question was, what's your general feeling around using nuclear as a form of clean energy? And 70% of us said we should be using more, which is great. I mean, it feels like we have a really good audience, a really understanding, educated audience. Would you agree with that, Mr. Insular?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like from what we were reading, not the perception.
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe you just have a very select LinkedIn crowd.
It could be.
You know?
It could be. We only also received 30 votes, so I don't know. Is that a big enough sample size? But yeah, who knows? Only about 13% of people said that the risks are too high. But it's good to see that in general, my audience, or let's say our audience for the podcast, is sort of like maybe they educated from the podcast and they like, oh, it's actually lekker.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to let myself believe that.
Let yourself believe that, Mr. Hunselaar. Fair enough. All right. So, Mr. Hunselaar, back to carbon capture, right? So I think we've got a pretty decent understanding what's carbon capture, what's storage, what's utilization, all of those fancy things, the utilization mafia, all of those fancy things. You're going to find us a metric on if it's a net good or net bad, hopefully by the end of this podcast. I leave that to your Googling skills. But let's talk quickly about the actual practicality of carbon capture. So you'll see here, this section, I've got here a few reports. I think from my research, the general feeling I get is it's very difficult to make a carbon capture facility at commercial scale profitable at all. Like lots of these things are government funded. They get to like commercial stage and then they sort of just get abandoned. It's very weird. The only ones that really operate for long periods of time are the oil companies' carbon capture units. So I'm not pointing fingers. I don't want an oil company person to come and try and assassinate me. I'm just saying it's suspicious. Okay? Anyway, there's a global CCS Institute report. I pulled this one from 2022. They basically said there's about 194 large-scale CCS facilities. Found a report again from 2023. And they said, oh, let me try and find this thing here. Sorry, I missed it here. There's about 45 commercial scale facilities. So I don't know, whatever the difference is between large and commercial scale, let it be. But there's a few facilities running around the world. And I don't know what to make of it. They say there's over 700 projects currently all over the world, like sort of in different stages of development. And estimates are that by 2030, we're going to be able to pull about 435 megatons per year of CO2 out of the atmosphere, with a storage capacity of about 615 megatons. So it's a decent amount. It's not a lot, but I mean, I think every little bit counts. Again, McKinsey and Company said that they've done an estimate, and they say that by 2030, CO2 products. So the main thing, let's pause on that quickly. The main thing I've seen that you can make from CO2, some companies make some pellets. I don't know what you do with the pellets. It looks like they make a fuel from it. But the main thing you can do with CO2 is make synthetic fuels from it. So that's the main thing I've seen from it. Unpause here. So McKinsey and Company says that the CO2-based products around the world from these facilities could be worth about $800 billion to $1 trillion worth of actual CO2-based product that you could make from it. So, I mean, that seems decent to me. I don't know what the costs are involved in that.
So wait. If I'm understanding you correctly, are you saying that this is now with direct air capturing?
No, this is with, so if I say carbon capture.
That they... Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry, there was a bit of a lag. If I say carbon capture, it's direct air capture and also the carbon capture, like pulling off flue gases. All right, so it's combined.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Question.
But direct air capture is such a small part of the market. Yes, what the heck am I doing? Such a small part of the market. Like, I just combined the two. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So, bigger picture. While we will be able to hit about 435 megatons by 2030, that's still less than what we wanted to be at 2030, which is we wanted to be at about 1 gigaton of CO2 a year by 2030. And I don't know, it's one of those things where like the goalposts keep getting moved, like how we're always 20 years away from like a solid state battery, or how hydrogen will always be the fuel of the future type of thing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Now we've come full circle. So I want to sort of just end on this for specifically how carbon capture could be useful and why I see people like actually think there's a future for it. If we get back to our cement example, remember we said it's the third biggest polluter in the world, producing concrete, stuff like that. You'll see I put in there a table and a graph. I think the graphy just shows it a bit better there. But if you institute carbon capture technologies at the point of, obviously where we said we're turning calcium carbonate into calcium oxide, there's a lot of carbon CO2 released there. And obviously in the burners, in the fossil fuel that you're burning from the burners, you can reduce the carbon per kilogram of cement by a substantial amount. You'll see there, I think the table just shows the percentages better there, but you'll see in fuel combustion, you can reduce the CO2 by 91, 92%, call it. And then in the calcination reaction, 95% reduce the CO2 that's released. So, again, I think the general thing on this podcast is it's not going to save us, but it's useful, right? It's a part to the puzzle of solving climate change. It's like if you can put less into the atmosphere, there's less for us to deal with other technologies. And it seems useful. But all right, so it makes sense, right? It makes sense in the cement industry. We've sort of come full circle. Again, let's touch on direct air capture, because I think of all the carbon capture stuff, this is the sexiest one, right? Bill Gates is involved. There's cool people with magical names doing cool things around the world. There's actually 4 commercial scale direct air capture plants in the world. I think it's 2 in US and the 2 in Iceland or Greenland, one of those companies. And I think one of the facilities is a Bill Gates facility. I'm not exactly sure. You guys can fact check me on that. But direct air capture, pretty much in the name. You take a big ass fan, you pull a lot of air through it, and you separate out the CO2. That's pretty much direct air capture. Does that make sense to you?
It seems inefficient. Honestly,
no, it's ridiculously inefficient. It's actually pretty bad. But a lot of the companies that are sponsoring these types of projects are big oil, believe it or not. Occidental Petroleum, ExxonMobil, they have pretty big, they're seeking government funding for these types of things. So yeah, it's wild. And they basically position it as this is the only way we're going to get to our like 1 gigaton type of thing, and we're going to use direct air capture for it. The biggest problem with direct air capture is I can't explain how energy intensive it is, because you have to suck so much air through this thing. You'll see the thing I highlighted there. So if you want to get 1 gigaton.
Yeah. Okay. Can I read it? Can I read?
You can read it, Mr. Please.
Ton of carbon dioxide. Yeah. Because this is going to be my honest reaction. 1 gigaton of carbon dioxide per year. This type of direct air up to 3,889 terawatt hours of energy, almost as much as the total electricity generated in the US in 2020. Damn. That's a lot. So, like, the emissions you're producing just to run this because there's emissions being produced there. So, like, are you really helping, or are you just like, are you trying to put out a fire by throwing fuel on?
No, 100%. I guess the argument is you'll use renewable energy to power the plant.
I know, but you need.
No, dude, it's mad. So I think
maybe if they're using a nuclear power station to run, then I could get behind it.
Then you could get behind it. How much did we produce in South Africa? Do you remember from our episode? What's our consumption per year? Isn't it like?
Sure, I think
200.
Wait, I can quickly look this up.
Pull it up, because it seems like a lot. I think we only produce like 300 terawatt hours a year in South Africa. I might be wrong.
Podcast episode.
While you're getting that, basically, it takes a lot of energy. A lot of that CO2, the oil companies want to use, obviously, to pump more oil out of the ground, which seems counterintuitive. And then the amount of money you also have to spend on this technology. And it's not only money. So it's a lot of studies think that we need to spend between. We'll get you now. Can I say my facts quickly? A 2021 study thinks that we have to spend about $1 trillion a year just on direct air capture to be like meaningful. Bill Gates' company says if we want to make a climate significant scale, we have to spend $5 trillion a year. So it's costly. And you know what the other thing is? No one's going to pay for it except governments, because no one wants to pay for something that costs them to do. So it's all like basically money down the drain type of thing. But come at us with your fact there, Mr. Insula.
Okay, South Africa in 2020, 44 terawatt hours of electricity.
200 and?
So 44.
That's ridiculous, hey? So that's, what would that be? 1/16. So South Africa itself, do the maths for me, because I don't want to do maths here. Let me do my calculator.
Do maths on
a podcast. 3,889 divided by 244.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was close. 16 times the full amount of power that South Africa produces would only pull 1 gigaton of CO2 out a year. Hey?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And this is a population of 60 million people. And that's just, anyway. So, okay. I think the bigger part of this is if we just look at the technology, don't look at what they want to use the CO2 for, don't look at the costs, nothing like that, the energy required. What makes it so difficult is that you have to pull so much air through, because believe it or not, air doesn't contain actually a lot of CO2. If you look at the composition of air, it's about 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and then the rest is other gases and some water vapor. So you're really looking at that small percentage of a percentage. That's why you have to pull so much air through, and that's why it costs so much electricity to run the plant. Right, so that's direct air capture. Like I said, it's really sexy because Bill Gates is involved. Anything Bill Gates is like his name on is sexy, right? I don't know what it is. It's like Microsoft, direct air capture. I don't know what it is. But it's the sexy, like younger brother of carbon capture. And I don't know. I have my own thoughts on it, but we can get into it. So, Mr. Hunselaar, let's get into the problems of carbon capture. I know we haven't talked about the problems enough, right? But yeah, I'll take this first point for you. Scale. It's very hard to scale up carbon capture. So, Yassi, something. Sorry, I got a bit of interference there. So I got this little snippet of information here from the US National Academics of Sciences Projects. I don't know, academies? Oh, not academics, academies. Let me start that again. So I got this little snippet from the US National Academies of Sciences, projects that we need to remove about 10 gigatons per year by 2050 of CO2 and 20 gigatons per year by century's end if we want to meet these like sort of these 2 degree, 1.5 degree targets, right? So it's a lot of CO2 to remove. And you guys just saw how much electricity it would take to do the 1 gigaton. We physically don't have the resources or maybe the commitment to do it is basically the thing. Again, it takes a lot to scale it up. Not really, really good. Then it comes into the thing, and I feel like this draws a line with nuclear waste. Like, it's misunderstood. People don't want, I don't know how you would feel if the government came to you and said, listen, we're doing carbon capture. We want to inject 1 million tons of carbon underneath your house. How would you feel about that?
I don't know. I mean, how much is 1 million tons of carbon? I'm assuming it's a lot.
I don't know. A lot of carbon dioxide. But would you feel comfortable with that? Like, would you feel safe?
Nah, I would feel like my house is about to explode.
Right. And also, like it's unanswered questions. So I think a bit more needs to go into it. You'll see there the little point I put in there. So this was some study that was done. So they say, again, like a lot of the research says that leakage is it's possible, but it's not likely that it'll happen. It's most likely that most CO2 projects will remain underground for at least 10,000 years. So I think it's very similar to the nuclear waste problem, right? So like we have a good way of dealing with it. It's just public perception. Because I know I myself, maybe I'm alone in this, but I wouldn't feel comfortable if there was a CO2 field near me because it just seems dangerous. So maybe it's a bit on the public front with that. I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Could be,
no,
right?
No. I mean, surely you could still store it at high pressures and it would be okay.
Yeah, I think the problem is like underground because like the higher pressure, the more likely it is to push out into the groundwater maybe. Who knows?
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? So then I think that the third big problem with carbon capture is, again, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of money to run. And like I said, the only people who will be willing to do this are sort of governments. Obviously governments and the people who run choose the government and all of that stuff. But like it's going to be a lot of taxpayer money to produce these things. It's a technology that's not tested. We don't actually know if it contributes a lot. Are there better methods, which we'll maybe get into a bit just now? But it's going to be difficult. I say it's difficult. You have any other problems you want to bring up around carbon capture?
No, I think you've pretty much touched all the points. I think for me the biggest thing, especially with that direct air kept, how inefficient the whole process is. It just doesn't seem worth it to go about it that way.
Yeah.
Like surely there's a better way.
No, 100% there might be a better way. To me, before we get on to the better ways, it just feels like that would be like a last resort type of thing, but it's being pushed as the be all and end all. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it's just the marketing around it. But like you said, there are alternatives, Mr. Hunselaar. There are alternatives. And what's the other thing that's all around us in general that captures carbon naturally?
And uses it to grow.
You're getting there, man. Just say it. Just let it come out.
It's like, what's long, brown, and thick? It's a tree.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Trees, right? So this is the the competitor to carbon capture. I wouldn't say carbon capture in like a cement application. Like, I feel like there's actually really good arguments to be made for that. But like against direct air capture, this is like a direct competitor. Like, and to me, it makes no sense why you would go direct air capture if you have this as the option. So, trees, like we said, trees in the US, so this is just looking at the US now, already by themselves capture about 1 billion tons of CO2 a year. Just these trees. And they estimate that if you actually looked after the forests a bit better, you could increase that number by 70%. So call it 1.7. That's not using more land. That's nothing. That's just managing the forests better, right? That seems like a pretty good amount of output you can get there. Then, this is interesting. Someone from Nebraska needs to get a hold of us because I don't know how big Nebraska is. But apparently if you had to reforest 50 million acres of land, which is apparently the size of Nebraska. Apparently, I don't know how big that is. You could sequester, which is just a nice way of saying get CO2 into the trees at about 2 billion tons of CO2 per year. So this to me, I know we had a discussion around this today. I don't know if you have any further thoughts on it, but this to me seems like a no-brainer. I don't know why you would even look at developing direct air capture, right? Does it make sense to you?
And like, honestly, trees it's low maintenance as well. I mean, you don't need so much infrastructure for the trees either.
Yeah.
Plant a seed, and then like, if you constantly, it kind of manages itself.
Right, exactly. And it's beautiful as well. We had this discussion as well. Like, if you're gonna like plant a forest, it's a public good. It makes people feel better. Like, you can use it recreationally. Maybe it's a tourist thing. I don't know what the story is. But like, it's a more beautiful thing than doing a big ass facility with like 100 massive fans. Like, you're gonna take your family on a picnic to a forest, not to go look at some fans, right? Doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, anyway, so this is the competitor to direct air capture. It's apparently, if you look at the costs, it's about 1/10 the price to reforest an area versus putting in a direct air capture facility. I actually feel like it's a lot more expensive than that, but I don't know what goes into that. So about 1/10 the cost. It's a lot easier to implement. Like, to plant a tree is a lot easier than getting scientists, engineers, municipalities, everyone involved, electricity, all of that stuff to a place to put up a direct air capture facility. So yeah, that is the competitor. And to me, in my humble engineering opinion, trees win. Trees win. I don't know what your feelings are.
I mean, like, billions of years of evolution have given us trees, and I feel like sometimes nature has given it you away. So right. don't fix what ain't broke.
Don't fix what ain't broke. All right. So final concluding thoughts here, Mr. Hunseloss. Summarize this up for us and summarize your thoughts up for us. Carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Give it to us straight.
It still has its place in things like the cement industry, places where you're producing a lot of carbon dioxide, so like where you produce. I think carbon capture technology has its place there. If we're going to talk about direct air capture, I really think that's a waste of time. Maybe there's something out there that could prove me wrong. And yeah, I mean, is big oil pushing carbon capture? Looks like it. But at the same time, like, is that a net good or net bad? Like, again, like, if carbon capture is the way we can use fossil fuels without the consequences, then yeah, I think it's definitely worth looking into it and see, even if it's just so that we can bridge the gap until we get renewable energy sources on the way, all of that stuff like hydrogen. And I definitely think it has its place, but to me, it's a temporary thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you agree?
I would tend to agree. Like, everything you said makes a lot of sense to me. The only thing I'd say is, yeah, Flip, I actually have nothing to add. You summarized that perfectly. Lekker. Ready to move on?
Nice.
Okay, guys, so that is direct air capture, carbon capture, utilization, storage, all those fancy things. You have our thoughts, guys. Please feel free to reach out to us, actually, if you guys have alternative thoughts, if you want to add to anything we've said. If one of you is very good at Googling and finds out if there's a net benefit or a net bad for them using enhanced oil recovery, that would be great, because I feel like Mr. Hunselaar has not found the Google that we needed. Is that correct?
No.
Not yet.
I need to concentrate a bit harder.
Fair enough. But if one of you guys,
well, I'm trying to listen to you as well.
There we go. If one of you guys can find that for us, we would highly appreciate it. Let's move on to permission to bitch, Mr. Hunselaar. What is your bitching for this week?
So they've been complex for the past, I don't know, 3 months or so.
Yes.
So now they finally paving the last section in my own yard, which is, you know what, I get it, it's fine. But now, so there's about 4 houses, which is about 4 cars. Yeah, something like that. Like there's 4 vehicles that are displaced from their parking area. And the thing is, now we're supposed to be able to park in the visitors parking, and it's supposed to be dedicated for us, so no one else is allowed to park there.
Fair.
And yesterday I get home and some oak is parked in my house to go park around the corner. So yeah, not the biggest inconvenience, but around the corner there's this hump. They've put in speed bumps now.
Oh, nice.
One of the instruction is, no, we're supposed to park on this hump. But then people are like, no, but their cars are too low, so they can't get over the hump properly. So now people can't park on the car. I'm like, how is this a problem? Like, whether my car is there and you can't get over the hump anyway. So yeah, it's not that big of a bitch, but
it's a bit of a bitch.
A bit of a bitch.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Is that all your bitching?
I mean, I've got more to bitch about, but I don't think this is the right place.
Fair enough. So my bitch was actually very painful for me. So you remember when I got that migraine? It was a terrible time. You had many sympathies for me. You gave your condolences, all of those things. So I got a migraine the one day. It was a nice Sunday after we'd played some paddle. I was actually having a very lacquer time until that point, and then I got the migraine. Now, came home. Jen knows, like, when this starts to happen, it's get me into the darkest room possible, give me a little bit of water, and give me the nice, like, cold thing, and let me just sleep. You can't get anything else out of me. I know you know this as well. Like, it's a fool's errand to try and do anything with someone who has a migraine. So anyway, I was busy. I can't remember. I'd had a little nap, and then I woke up again, and I just wanted to play a podcast. So I was like, okay, let me use technology that, like, it's supposed to be meant for this. So I go, okay, like, hey Siri, like, what's the story? Will you sort? She's going to come on now. Oh goodness. I ask her basically, please play a podcast from the Motley Fool. I think I was listening to the Motley Fool. So then she says, no. Basically just says no. Oh, okay. Or she doesn't have that app or something. So then I say, oh no, my Apple Music account is not there. I say, okay, Siri, please play from Apple Podcasts the Motley Fool podcast. Then she says, no, I can't open your phone. You need to open your phone first. Then I can maybe do this thing for you. So it's like, doesn't that ruin the whole point of the voice activation if I still need to use my face to, I don't know. Anyway, so then I open it with my face. Now I'm just in the mood. I could just go and click on it. It would probably be easier, but I just want to see if it will work, if this technology will work. I say, Siri, please open Apple Podcasts and play any podcast episode that I have downloaded. She couldn't do it. She couldn't do it, man. Like, is this where we are in the world? That the technology they promise us can't even work?
Yeah. And also, like, another thing, and this kind of builds off of what you were bitching about. So on Spotify, you don't want to search for a song while you're driving.
Yes.
But you might be, you don't want to type because you know it's not safe. And I feel like it's not even a difficult thing to implement. Why don't like Apple Music and Spotify have like a voice recognition function where you can
Yes.
search a
Yes.
song. Like honestly, how has no one thought about this?
I can't understand. I can't understand it. I don't know. But anyway, it gave me more of a migraine to try and get this to work. So I just stopped. So I've given up on Siri. Useless. Absolutely useless. No real world applications. The only thing I can use her for reliably is to start a timer. That's it. Useless for everything else. But anyway, that's my bitching. Mr. Hunselaar, any life hacks for this week?
Oh, no life hacks this week.
You ain't got no life hacks. Okay, well, I've got two for you, and they are magical. So, you already know about my underwear story, but I will share it with the world now. So I went and bought the most expensive pair of underwear I've ever bought in my life, which is sad because like it's like half the price of what Jen pays for underwear. So, is this like, are women just overcharged for underwear? I don't know. But anyway, that's a story for another time. I bought these underwear, magical, went to Sportsman's Warehouse. I think they're from Falk. They have like hydrodema, I don't know, some very fancy material make. And it's made to like wick away water and keep everything in place. I was like, I'm going to spend some money on underwear because I'm tired of the chafing now. And I ran in these underwear. It's changed my life, man. It has changed the way I run. Just getting a new pair of underwear. Magic. Would recommend it. Would recommend it. If you're a runner, an active person, I might even get a few pairs to wear consistently. That's how much my life has changed. Just from a pair of underwear. Probably my best purchase of the year, man. My best purchase of the year. So, there's my first hack. If you guys are runners, get a good pair of underwear. It's helpful. Second one. I found my new dessert for the masses. Pineapple and yogurt. Oh, dude, I can't explain to you. A nice fresh pineapple cut up.
Thing now.
It's so good. I have it every day now. Nice fresh pineapple cut up with some plain yogurt.
You know something interesting?
Tell me.
On a pineapple, each of like the little, I don't know, shell thingies.
Yeah.
On the pineapple itself, each of those is technically its own fruit.
This is my. I don't know if I believe that, man. I don't know if I believe that face. Really?
Yeah.
Like legit.
Yeah, for real.
What does that mean?
Legit.
What does that mean? You can grow a new pineapple from each of those nodules?
No, it just means each of those things is a separable fruit. So maybe it is. I don't know.
Okay, I will test this.
I'm gonna Google this. Maybe
I will test this for you and give you feedback next time. How does that sound?
apple fruit.
Does that sound alright to you?
Yeah.
Okay, while you Google that, let me hit you with yes, yeah. Does
the pineapple fruit is not really a fruit, but a mass of individual berries fused to a central stalk.
I don't believe that one bit. That just doesn't meld with my worldview. I don't accept it.
Yeah, well, a 2-second Google will prove my point, so I must be right.
Fair enough, man. Okay, recommendations. What you got going there?
Okay, so are you a fan of Roald Dahl?
Yes,
you must be. You had a childhood.
Very...
So, I don't know, a while back when I was driving back from Berg, my old employer, we listened to an audiobook of The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. And then recently I found it was on my cinema, that it was like, again, if you just search The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, it's got that same story by Roald Dahl, but and it's like told in like a movie kind of format. Okay. But it's really well done. Like it's not like it's telling the story, even like the main character's telling the story, but it's like following them as they go and the scenes change, and it's very cool. It's quite old, but it as well. Anyone knows do you know what it's about, that story?
No, not at all.
Yeah, so it's about this like super rich dude, like, and he loved to gamble. So he finds this book where he reads about like a yogi, which is like a sort of a mystical man, whatever.
Yeah.
And in the book look at just how he can meditate and then get the power to see without his eyes.
Okay.
And he eventually realizes that with this he can see. So if there's a playing card upside down, he can see what the card is from upside down, and he trains for like 3 years to master this power of being that he can go to casinos and make a lot of money. But then like it just follows like his life story of how he eventually got this power. He had it, what he did with it. I don't want to ruin the story, so I don't want to say what happened.
No, it sounds interesting.
But it's very compelling. Like it's very good.
It's the one. Nice.
3 other stories. There's this one which is, I don't know, it was actually a bit disturbing, and then there was something about a rat.
Something about a rat.
Which was just a little bit, yeah.
Ratatouille.
Like, and then there was another one, not that one. But anyway, so like you'll see, it's like 4 short stories of like Roald Dahl, but the specific one is the one. It's its own book, so read the book as well.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's very good.
Nice. Do you think I would enjoy it?
I definitely think you would enjoy it.
Okay, sweet. Okay, now I'll have a look at it this weekend, I think. Any other recommendations?
I see you've got some. Nah.
No, nothing from you. All right, so I got a few here. So I already told you my stories on Blink Twice. We watched it. For anyone who doesn't know, Channing Tatum. It was pretty good, like psychological thriller type of vibes. Not for me. You know the movies I like. This is not for me. Jen loved it. It super creeped me out. Super messed me up a bit. I actually think about it quite a lot, which I feel like is not good. So I think I need to stick to animations. The whole thing is like this billionaire guy basically takes this woman to an island, and they do terrible things. Yeah, they do terrible things to them at night, and they have this perfume that makes them forget, and then basically how the women get away. But yeah, very, very rough. I don't know. It's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. Good movie, well made. Channing Tatum's a G.
But not your genre. Not your genre.
Not mine. Not my taste. Because it fucked me up, man. Like I think about it a lot. But anyway, then watching The Office as is per usual. It's like on rotation. I'm just gonna highlight the end of season 2. Just magic, you know. Jim comes out, confesses his love for Pam, they kiss, and you're like, oh, come on, Pam, come on. Woman, can't get enough of them, right? So yeah, anyway, on to season 3, loving it. If you have not watched The Office, I highly recommend. Then this one is like a recommend against, but I also like, I'll know. This is one of the ways I'm going to see if Jen listens to the end of the podcast, because I'll get cucked out a bit, I think. But I downloaded The Secret Lives of Mormon Housewives for her. Terrible. I don't understand how anyone can watch that. It's like 8 episodes, an hour long, of these Mormon wives, and then there's swingers, and I don't know. It's just like
swingers.
Dude, the one chick's a swinger in the Mormon community, or was a swinger, or there was a scandal. I watched like 10 minutes. I was so bored I couldn't. So I don't look to me to tell you the plot. No, there's no nudity. It's really boring crap.
It's just
yeah, no, it's terrible. I don't know how.
It sounds like one of those shows where if they have like drama or a fight, they overdo the fight in the
literally 100%. All these housewife things, but I don't know. Jen loves it. I feel like women in general love these type of things, to see the drama. Not for me, but maybe for them. So yeah, that's my recommendations. That's what I've been watching. Anything else from you, Mr. Insula?
Oh no, not really from me. I haven't been watching too much TV.
Not really. How was Earth Dance? You want to give the audience a summary there?
It was cold. It was very cold. Yeah, I know. So we get to so first of all, I thought it was in last year, but it turns out it was in Harties. So that's its own story.
That's its own thing.
that was my bad planning, because I didn't bother to check.
Yeah.
Properly. So like we happened to get a cold front on this weekend, and it was cold, man. I wore a beanie and a scarf.
No, it was cold.
Everything. And then we get to the place. No idea where to go. So eventually I'm just asking the security guard, look, where can I park? I'm supposed to play. I just want to offload my equipment. Whatever. He's like, no, go talk to this woman. This woman's like, too close to the stage because there's children running around.
Oh my god.
But she'll let me through. Okay, so I'm like, okay, cool. I'm there. We find the stage. It was quite a vibe.
Is it? Okay, just cold.
Dude. Yeah. Yeah, so the guy that played after us, can't remember his name. He was actually pretty cool. Like, he was like, but he had a didgeridoo, and like, so his whole thing was he made like, like in Dune, the music that plays in the background. That was his thing. Long, like very long, like 15 minutes. Like, I still remember he's like, I've got just one last little number for you guys. And then like, in this time, I went to the bathroom, which is like 150 meters away. I go there, do my business. I wait for a let. We come back. He's still busy.
Like,
Pack all our stuff in the car. Then we go stand by, like, because there was like a little bonfire there. So then we went to go stand there. And then eventually Alet's like, no, she's getting cold, waits in the car. And then Jason and I had to wait for him because he was letting Jason's drum throne. Meanwhile, he didn't even need it because he was sitting on like they provided, which was not as nice as his one. He just used my brother's one to put his laptop on. And at this point, look, he was very good that away from him. But at this point, we want to go home because it's cold and we've been there for a while and we're tired. And others dudes are already playing like half an hour over his time. And like like he's about to end a song. This is after like him having played for like 15 minutes already. And I remember like he stopped and I turned to Jason and I said, if he does breakdown, I swear I'm going to lose it. And lo and behold, he goes into like a 5-minute didgeridoo breakdown kind of thing. Like I'm pretty sure like had the scenario been different, I would have been really into it. Because it was impressive. But like just, I was not in the mood for it.
Yeah, no, it was cold. You want to go home? Yeah, no, fair enough. No. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. But overall,
it was a fun time.
Oh, is it? All right, sorry, man. I had the lag there. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening all the way to the end, listening to all the cuck that we talk. If you guys want to reach out to us, please, it's highlevelpodcasts@gmail.com. Please feel free, guys, reach out to us on all the social medias. On Instagram and YouTube, it's at High Level Podcasts. You can reach out to us individually on LinkedIn. It's Damon Hunselaar, Jonathan Dalport. You guys can message us, send us comments, whatever the story is. I will put the links to those things below in the description as well. I hope you guys have an awesome week. And yeah, enjoy. Any words from you, Mr. Hunselaar?
Yeah. No, go ahead. Have a lekker one.
Have a lekker one. All right, guys.
Have a lekker one.